Do you really want honesty? Do you really want honesty? Because the more I think about honesty, the more I realize that the question isn't simply why do people lie? I want to ask a more uncomfortable question, which is how honest am I actually capable of being? And as you can hear, that is a very different question because we all want honest people around us, right? We want honest partners. We want our friends to be honest to us. We want honest politicians. And we want our doctors, of course, to be honest, right? The people that we work with, right? But before we demand honesty from everyone else, how honest are we with ourselves, really? Hi everyone, this is Dawn Angela and welcome back to my channel. I have written in my journal, which was over there on my desk, okay, this question that says, why do we demand honesty from other people? Why do you hold accountability from other people to be honest to you? And I think the answer is actually very human. We demand honesty because honesty gives us certainty. So when someone tells us the truth, we know what reality we are dealing with, right? We know what we can expect, right? We can relax and we can trust. But when someone lies, they don't just hide information. They change the reality we are making decisions inside, right? They change our thoughts. And that's why lying can be destructive. Imagine you're taking a medicine because your doctor tells you it's the right treatment. What happens if that information you were given was false, right? Or you're making political decisions based on information that isn't true, right? Voting, for examples, or building a marriage around something that your partner has been lying about. That's huge. The lie doesn't remain inside the person who told it. It enters to your reality. My reality, your reality, imagine that. And that's why we care so much about honesty, because it's a big deal. Our life is a big deal. However, I ask myself, am I honest? Me, myself, huh? And I question, how authentic can I be? And I think authenticity is much harder than honesty. Because how do we know we're not lying? We don't even know when we're lying, right? For example, have you ever said, I'm okay to someone when I'm okay, right? When someone asks you, I'm okay, when you weren't even okay. And then you said that you don't care anymore when you really care deeply inside, right? Have you ever convinced yourself that you don't want something? Because admitting that you want something would make you vulnerable. That's interesting. Because perhaps the most difficult lies aren't the ones we tell other people. And they are the one that we tell ourselves successfully. Sometimes I shock myself. This is where philosophy is fascinating to me, because if a lie is deliberate, we can usually identify it, right? I know I'm lying and you know you are lying. But what about something I genuinely believe? That isn't true. Okay? Can I lie to myself without knowing that I am lying? And I think we can, right? Our brain, our minds are incredibly good at protecting the image that we have created of ourselves. And sometimes we don't change the truth, we change our interpretation of truth. So, for example, we tell ourselves, uh, I left because I didn't care, for example, in a relationship, right? Or maybe we actually left because we were afraid. And then some people would say, I don't need them anymore. Maybe you desperately wanted them. Sometimes we would say that, we did it for a logical reason. But what if you did it only because your ego was hurt? Yeah. So when you start to think things about that, authenticity becomes difficult, because it's not saying whatever you feel. It's like examining, like, am I willing to examine myself, my actual true self, by asking those questions, by being self-aware of your own reality, right? Now, the next question is, how authentic can you be? Right? And I could say that it will be difficult to be constantly authentic, because we are forever changing, forever evolving. The person I was yesterday is not the same person I am today. And that is why we can also say that authenticity is not our final destination. It can, however, be a practice. So we can start, when we say practice, it's like applying things. For example, stopping yourself and asking, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Okay, what am I actually afraid of? Okay, the reason why I'm lying, what am I trying to protect? What do I want people to believe about me? That's also another question to stop and ask yourself. What are you refusing to admit to yourself? My funny thoughts though went somewhere else, because if individual human beings struggle with honesty, what happens when you put that human being inside of a system of power? And what are those? What are those system of powers? Politics, government, religion, business, marriage, and all of these systems. Okay, all of these systems depend to some extent on what? Communication. Communication, which can reveal reality and can construct a reality of someone else. Imagine that. That is why I started thinking, perhaps lying is an art. Not because lying is beautiful, but because persuasion itself can become an art. Imagine you can take something true, something partially true, or something partially or completely false. Yeah, and communicate it in a way that makes another person to believe it. And that's not a new phenomenon, by the way. That's not new. Human beings have been doing that for a long time, thousands of years. Yeah, this is why the Bible is created. Sorry, why did I laugh? I wrote something on my notebook, which is just sitting right over there. I don't wanna get up and read it, but I think I wrote something like that politics is no longer an art. Because I was trying to analyze things, maybe it is not an art anymore, but actually, I'm not sure that's true, because politics has always been an art. Let's be honest. The art of persuasion, the art of rhetoric, the art of making people believe, right? The art of presenting yourself as trustworthy, the art of making an idea feel inevitable. And that's what's fascinating to me about politics, because political power doesn't require physical force, okay? You don't need to force people to vote you, to be on your side, to believe in you. You only have to convince them, and once someone believes that something is true, they can begin to act as if it is true. And that's an extraordinary kind of power. Perhaps art and politics is the most dangerous one, I could say. Why are we always failing in politics? Guys, what is it that's still making you believe in these politicians? My God, stop admiring them. We went into analyzing from my own perspective to philosophical perspective to a bigger system, political perspective, and now let's go down to individual. Yeah, an individual perspective, we can discuss or share about relationship, love, for example. This is where it becomes even more interesting, because if lying and persuasion are part of human communication, then they have obviously entered love. Think about dating. Okay. People don't always show you exactly what they are and who they are, right? They show you the version of themselves they want to see. They want you to see. To be honest, I do the same. We perform, we seduce, we exaggerate things. I like exaggerate things. We hide things as well, of course. We present our best version, yeah. And sometimes we aren't even consciously manipulating anyone, right? We genuinely want to be the person we are presenting. And I noticed that about myself too when I became self-aware in dating. One time I genuinely wanted to be the person I am presenting to the other person. But then eventually reality catches up, because you cannot actually maintain an image for a long time. And intimacy eventually will reveal the real you. Eventually, yeah. I didn't notice that my camera is like that. Like my face is literally below. Sorry about that. I'm sorry. I was just looking to myself because I can't focus when I look at myself. Okay, we have discussed marriage, politics, governance, and this system. What do they actually have in common though? Huh? Friendships, even individual relationships. What do you think do they have in common? Trust. They want your trust, and trust requires communication. See, communication can either bring us closer to reality or further away from it. So perhaps the real question we can ask is, should we always tell the truth? Because that's actually a much more complicated philosophical question. What happens to human relationship when trust is built on a reality that isn't true? What happens? And I think the answer is eventually reality. Eventually reality collects its debts, you know? Earth has a funny way of collecting debts. I just said that to someone earlier because this person did me wrong in my life, and then this person wrote me a message telling me that he went into a car crash, broke 4 ribs, and fractured shoulders. Be careful who you hurt, man, because this earth is so funny in collecting debts. Yeah, so even when you're lying, eventually this world has a funny way of collecting its debts. Careful, man, careful. What does honesty, after discussing all those factors, what does honesty actually mean? Does it mean we say whatever that comes in our head? I don't think so, because brutal disclosure isn't honesty. It's cruelty. At the same time, silence isn't dishonesty. It's compassion. So honesty itself requires judgment. It requires knowing what is true, okay? What is my responsibility to disclose? Why am I saying this? Am I saying it to help someone understand reality, or am I saying it to control how they see me? And that's the distinction I am interested in. So that is why I started with the thought, if you will ask a biologist, I've read this somewhere, that if you ask biologists, they would say, if you want honesty, try physics. But if you're going to ask a philosopher, if you want honesty, try philosophy. Yeah. So maybe that's it. You want honesty? Try philosophy, and maybe that's why. That's exactly why. Because philosophy forces you to question the person who is asking the question. So for example, if I'm asking, why are people lying to me? Philosophy asks, why are you so certain that you aren't lying to yourself? Huh? Gets mo ba? Okay, I'll say that again. Why are people lying to me? I ask myself, right? Why are people lying to me? Why? Philosophy will ask you, why am I so certain that I am not lying to myself? Gets mo? If I will ask, why can't people be authentic? Philosophy will ask me, do you actually know who you are? It's like that. And then if I will ask again, why should people tell me the truth? Philosophy will ask me, what am I willing to discover when the truth finally arrives? And that's the uncomfortable part of honesty. We don't just have to be willing to hear the truth from other people. We have to be willing to survive the truth about ourselves. That's where authenticity begins. Like, before I even wrote about this and journal about this, and this thing end up in my YouTube channel, I asked myself these questions. Am I authentic enough to show up, to talk about this? Am I not lying to myself? Am I doing this to please other people or to have my own peace? And right now, for example, in my earlier when I was writing about this, I normally compare things, whether is this decision making thrill seeking or giving me peace. Now that we have arrived to that new question, we will talk about that in our next topic. I'm excited to share about that because that is another philosophical analysis. So stay tuned, and till next time, thank you for watching.